Nostalgia. It's a funny thing. It takes you back before you even realise it. The biggest producers of the early 2000s, PHERRE, RODNEY, DARKCHILD, JERKINS, TIMBALAND, were shaping entire eras of sound. You didn't just listen to their music, you felt it. Their beats were the background of your life, whether you were riding in the backseat or watching 106 & Park after school. But here's the thing. Music is cyclical, and if you're producing R&B in 2025, there's a lot you can learn from these guys. Their secrets: groove, harmony, movement, the way Pharrell's chords feel alive, the way Darkchild's melodies evolve, and the way Timbaland turns anything into rhythm. All of it can make your samples feel expensive, timeless, and undeniable. Today we're breaking it down, what made their sound special, and how you can use it in your production right now. You might be asking, how is this relevant to my productions? But for me, knowledge is power. So the more that you know about these legends and the techniques and tactics that they use to get people up, sell records, make people dance, make people feel certain emotions, are so important for you to understand and then employ in your own way, in your own sample and beat making. We're going to look at a classic track from the Neptunes, from Darkchild, and from Timbaland. We're going to dissect some of the most important elements that we can take for our productions today, and then I actually made a track in the style of each of these producers, and I'm going to demonstrate to you some techniques and some tricks that I used for each of these tracks that you can also employ in your sample and beat making. There's going to be loads of lessons learned along the way today, and I haven't seen anyone do exactly this kind of thing before, so you're going to want to stay tuned to the very end to catch all of the sauce. So go follow me on Instagram at bsticks_production, cop one of my free mini kits, the link is in the description. You've got bass midis and a mixing cheat sheet. So Hot in Here was released in 2002 and went on to become #1 in Canada, the US, and other countries around the world as well. And this contains the essence of Pharrell's signature drum, groove, and style. Because although you don't want to rip it directly, there's plenty of things in here that you can take. We all know Pharrell's still relevant, producing for Brent faiyaz. But I want to draw your attention first to this drum beat. Now essentially what we have here is funk. It's 2002, but really this borrows from 1979. And that's why I love doing this, because I can show you about bounce and about the history of these things that you may not already know. You can really hear the influence there, right? I want to draw your attention to the slight offbeat nature of some of the hits here. Look at this snare falling just slightly behind the beat here, and you've got countless examples of that if I just put the cursor on there. So experiment with moving your drums around, and I did that in the example we're going to see shortly. It's so interesting that there's not an 808 in sight to me here, and that should give you encouragement to like break out of that box of just using the same kind of sounds all the time and thinking, oh, I need to use 808s and da-di-da-da because that's what everyone uses. And once we bring in the bass, it's tight. That bass is leaving space, but also just hitting on that bubble. Experiment with maybe like stripping back your bass and just having your bass on every bar, maybe leaving space, especially when you're doing kind of up-tempo tracks. And the cool thing is the call and response between the bass and the keys. We've got like an EP, an electric piano, and like a kind of clav sound or almost like a key guitar. It's probably from the chord triad, which is going to be a theme that you're going to see. Synth that I use a lot. Boom. The other thing that I want to point your attention to, and this is something I point out in all my samples, just the simplicity and the lack of extra sounds or things that are not necessary. And then finally, I just want to talk melodically here. Really interesting chord progression. Immediately gives you that Neptunes vibe once you lay those drums down, and it's this movement that's almost like a Phrygian dominant movement. When I say that, don't worry. I want you to remember here is take any minor chord, for example D minor, and if you play an E flat major chord after that, or an E flat major 7th, you're gonna get that kind of Neptune's trademark sound. You can do it with 2 chords. I'm going to show you. If we jump into the beat that I made, songs like Best Time and Wasting Time are great examples of how Sonder and Brent faiyaz love to use these kind of 2000s sounds and technique. And Best Time borrows heavily from Caught Out There, Khalees, which is one of the Neptunes breakout tracks. So I started by programming this Pharrell-esque drum beat. You can see I used a cowbell, just like we heard in our reference track. And I used some hats that, if we see here, I slightly moved off of grid as well. I also added a salt shaker, which I did a clever panning trick with. When I'm programming drums, I always think about what my desired effect is. If I want to evoke memories of the 2000s, I'm going to use certain sounds, and I'm asking myself questions. Am I going to go for a Neptunes type feel, which is very, very in your face? Am I going to go for more of a Timbaland or DARKCHILD, which is a bit of a more triplet, kind of skippy, shuffly swung groove, which takes you down another route? When I'm going Neptunes, I'm using these organic drum sounds with this cowbell, and also not using your conventional 808 sounds. It does make you stand out a little bit. Remember what I said about minor chord to a major chord? I've done exactly that here, and I've used one of the Neptunes' favourite sounds in the Korg Triton, which is a synth that everyone used around the late 90s, early 2000s. I highly recommend you get the VST version of this or the Triton Extreme. Very similar to the harmony in Hot in Here was, which is just moving from an E minor to an F major, and then goes up to an F sharp major triad, and then a F major triad walking down chromatically, which just means every semitone down. I added some signature horns again from the Triton. I'm thinking about these horns just like how Pharrell used the EP in Hot in Here, a longer chord, whereas my guitar synth is more of a percussive da-da-da-da stabby kind of chord. I added a bass, or the Stein bass, in the Triton. And I've gone for a busier bass than Hot in Here, but I could have easily just taken out all these notes here. Couldn't not talk about the Neptunes without giving them a nod towards Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones and the harmony that they used to use in their bridges. So you'd go from quite a static verse section to a bridge that danced all over. Fronting is a great example of this. Pharrell or Chad love parallel movements. What do I mean by that? Well, I am going from the F major 7th down to the E minor 7th, and then I'm moving from the E flat major 7th to the D minor 7th. I used to love when I'd hear a contrasting bridge, and you don't really hear bridges in music anymore, but indulge me for a second. So it's good to know these things. I went for the EP sound, which contrasts with the static sounds. There's nothing really like this in the rest of the track. So not only are we changing harmonically, but we're also changing sonically here, which I used to really enjoy to hear. So and now I'm going to a slash chord here, which is just an A flat triad with a B flat in the bass, which is a slash chord. And you can actually play these slash chords and just move them and slide them up and down wherever you think sounds good. And I moved up to the same shape with a C in the bass. So that will be a B flat triad with a C in the bass. That just characterizes that MJ Rock With You kind of sound. And again, the Neptunes carried that through. So with everything in, the last couple of bars of the bridge. And while we're in a harmonic mood, let's move on to our next super producer, who perhaps uses harmony in one of the most exciting and interesting ways. Say My Name was released in 1999, and to this day, it remains one of the standout R&B tracks of the 90s, if not of all time. And when I was deconstructing this, it was apparent to me just how many layers are involved in this. Very different from the Pharrell tune. I really want to just highlight a couple of things. I want to highlight the chord progression and a couple of things with the melody. Unless you're a really, really good mixing engineer, have very, very good harmonic sensibility of arrangement, you may end up sounding a bit like a mess if you can't put it together like the genius that is Rodney Jerkins. There's a lot to take in here. I was particularly impressed with the use of sounds that I'd never heard before until I stripped this back. There's a wah-wah guitar in here. There's a flexotone, which is a famous instrument that Dr. Dre likes to use from the West Coast. It's a vinyl scratching. There's a tom fill that kind of goes right across the speakers that kind of reminded me of Genie in a Bottle, which was another massive track around the same time. So the song starts out just with the solo guitar line, which to me, it's a keyboard guitar emulating a real guitar. Got that kind of nylon string vibe to it. And this is a tactic that's been used in many, many tracks over the years and continues to be used now. And again, the way that it's played is not just arpeggiating. There's intricate rhythms at play from bar 1 here. Boom ba da bee ba. It kind of reminds me of The Boy's Mind, which was another Darkchild production. And that rhythm, boom ba da ba boom, boom ba da ba boom, boom ba da ba boom. So establishing a rhythmic context and also a melodic context, going from a C minor 7th to a A flat major 7th to a F minor 7th to like an A flat major triad to then a B flat major triad and then to like a B diminished chord. But there's so much variation and extra sounds that come in, it never gets boring. And I took inspiration for our progression from this progression, which is classic kind of R&B church. The syncopated drum beat here. Listen to how the vinyl scratches are almost part of the drum groove as well. This is very typical of late 90s pop and R&B, like you'll hear this in NSYNC, your Christina, things like that. I think a lot of the Swedish producers like Max Martin took a lot of inspiration from this kind of programming as well. Yeah. A lot of double time and half time rhythms going on here. It's really intricate. If you want to know any more, hit me up on IG and I'll give you more of a breakdown, but I don't really want to go too deeply into this now. Let's jump into our beat and see some of these techniques that I took and some that you can use. First of all, choice of harmony, and then how you present that harmony. By that I mean what sounds you're going to choose, how you're going to articulate that or orchestrate that. And I pretty much ripped the rhythm, which wasn't a rhythm that I would have naturally gone for, because when I arpeggiate, I tend to just go do 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 do, arpeggiate straight up in a very simple rhythmic pattern. But Darkchild's taught me that I can actually use a pattern like this. Rip that straight from him. Thank you very much, Darkchild, and you can do the same as well. I'd encourage you to go and look at these older records, these Destiny's Child records, Jagged Edge records, any of these records from back in the early 2000s. Take little elements that you haven't heard other people use in production now, bring them into your own production. It can help to give your production something unique. I remember a saying that someone famous once said, there's nothing new under the sun, and that's very true here. Now, progression wise, I've just gone A minor 7, G minor 7, and just walking down. My aim is to get to the F major 7th. We're in C major here, so get to that 4 chord, which is this chord here on bar 3, and obviously I'm just emulating a guitar, and then I'm just going for like 2-5-1, which leads us back to that A again, and the 2-5-1 is just about tension, 5, back to the A minor, release. I changed the rhythm of this up, as Darkchild did for the next 8 bars. And I'm highlighting that one note there, kind of pedal tone, which is something that I would do on guitar naturally, but it just gives it a real interesting texture when you emulate a guitar on a keyboard. Don't worry so much about... Don't worry too much. I really wanted to see if I could kind of make something very similar to Say My Name, so I just kind of went crazy with string lines. And then I dropped into a chorus section. I used a flexor tone just like in Say My Name, which I just got from Splice, and then I had to add in some wah guitar and see how that all would come together. And this really gives me kind of a K-pop feel, even like Ariana Grande or something like that. It's not necessarily that kind of alternative R&B, but it's always good to just kind of push yourself to try different things, and this really helped to expand maybe where I'd normally go. Good learning exercise. I thoroughly recommend you to try the same. Here we are with a classic from Timbaland, the Rhythm Master. Now, I know nowadays he's maybe more known for his AI, but back in the day, he was an absolute master of drums and did so many innovative things with Missy Elliott. What I can take from Timbaland is use your mouth as percussion, use any sounds around you to create drum sounds and bounce. And he really is the bounce king. It was Kanye that went to him when his just drums weren't knocking on Stronger, and Timbo just fixed them. Placement of drums, sounds here, kicks that knock. You've got a snare here, but you layer it with a clap, put a little bit of reverb on that clap, and then sample delay that clap, so use the huss effect to spread it out wide. Again, you're going to see tons of drums that are not completely on the grid here. Not every kick or not every sub bass has to be on the kick drum. Check this out right here. And again, this is more akin to an 808 sound than any of the sounds, any other bass sounds we've had so far. Again, tons of space. The cool thing that I love when you listen to Timbaland's arrangements is like, he'll just cut out like 2 beats worth and there's nothing there. A lot of different use of rhythm, some really interesting unison parts going on where the bass line is directly following the instruments. You can see them matching up quite a bit here. There's no real pads or chord sounds. Sometimes he does bring them in again, different sections, just like with Pharrell where I said bring in maybe a pad to, if you want some contrast. There's just that dun 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 dun. It's very raw and very like, it's all about that drum bounce. Once they're making you move, that's half the battle won. And there's classic Timbaland, that mouth percussion. So if we jump into our beat, I'm going to show you a couple of quick takeaways that you can apply. Now, if you're still with me, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. I know this is a bit of a longer one, but I really wanted to give you so much information on these 3 legends that you could take into your own work. And I really enjoyed doing this Timbaland style production, and I learned a lot, so I hope you can pick up a lot as well. I spent a lot of time on getting this drum groove going, and I did some beatboxing that I recorded into my phone and then sent to the computer, chopped it up. I also did some little chops of vocals, and even if you sing a phrase or even take a phrase from Splice, take a little chop. This is like 1 beat long here. So I used a doorbell, I used a clap, just in 1 or 2 places, just like Timbo did, and I used sample delay to spread it out wide, and some reverb as well to give it contrast between dry and wet. That's something Timbo loved to do. You have a wet clap, and then the next sound will be super dry, and that is a hidden secret that not many people have kind of revealed, but you know, I'm giving you all the sauce as always. I love that. Ding! Little doorbell on the offbeat. That's something that Timbaland would definitely have gone for. You can see I'm doing that mouth percussion there that I just recorded in. It's a variation. I'm panning these things as well, left to right. Accent clap here, coming in nice and wide. So you've got a variation of positioning of all the different drums. A unison line on my sounds, and you're pretty much the same between my bass and the guitar synth that I use. But just like Timbo, I didn't do everything the same. So just playing like a riff around A minor, I find it really helpful to just sing my lines out. Once I had those kind of drum bounce in my head, I was just bum. You can do anything sort of bum, da 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 go da da da. Think about bounce. Imagine your Timbaland, how he'd move, how he would sing stuff out. Like if you can sing it, then put it into the computer. That is a great tip there. Added some atmosphere, just this like forest floor, because I hear a lot of like birds chirping, and this is like, you use this in modern samples as well, but you'd hear it in Timbaland. He was one of the first producers I was like, what is that? It caught my ear, and it was like just random Foley sounds, an airport or people chatting or whatever it may be in the background. And the rest was all just kind of like flower up the groove here. I added this sound here, which is a nod to My Love, Justin Timberlake. What a record that was. Hands down in the beach and a sound. Like that is classic. If you want classic Timbaland, check out that album there. And there was a time almost around like 2008 to 2010 where Timbo leaned into that whole EDM thing that was going on at the time and used a lot of the sounds in his production. So yeah, you can borrow that as well. Like nothing's off limits here. I just want to show you to like maybe expand your mind, try new stuff. As I said, there's nothing new, but it's just how you use it and how you apply it.